Does it work? Distinguished guests, students, pupils from the schools, the youth, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Margarita Šešelgytė. I'm the director of the Institute of International Relations and Political Science, Vilnius University. It is my great honor and pleasure to be here with you and moderate a very remarkable and very timely event, which is called "The Future of Europe Belongs to Youth. How will we shape it?" And before I start with the important part of the event, I'll have to say some technical messages for you. First of all, about the online live broadcasting. Our event is being broadcasted on 3 channels. It's YouTube, 15 minutes, and Facebook. It's going to be recorded, and after 1 week, you will be able to find it on the Facebook page of the Liaison Office in Vilnius of European Parliament. The official language of the event is English, but there is also a translation, so you can use this option if you want to listen it in Lithuanian. And also this event is organized jointly by the University of Management and Economics, ISM, Institute of International Relations and Political Science, Vilnius University, and the Liaison Office of European Parliament in Vilnius. And now I'd like to invite the rector of this university, Dalius Misiūnas, for welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Margarita. Thank you, everybody. You know, not every Friday night you have so many people at university. So seeing so many of you here makes my heart happy. And thank you, President, for making this arrangement for us. Many people are here to listen to the discussion, and also, I'm quite sure, to ask some questions, which, as far as I get to learn, you like to answer, and you like to have a discussion. Here at ISM, we have a mission which is just there on the wall, which says that we see our purpose in challenging present, inspiring future, and empowering change. And of course, when we think about that, when we discuss it with our students, we primarily see it through the lens of professional development. Entrepreneurship, executive careers. However, as citizens, we also have a role in fulfilling this mission. And the foundational purpose of citizenship and the main way to participate in the democratic process is to vote. And 2024 is unique in that sense, in that context. Half of the world's population will be voting, will have an opportunity to vote. And that is more than 50 countries around the world. 37 of them are in Europe, and 27 out of those will be voting in the election of European Parliament. I don't know if you have checked it up, but in European Parliament elections, there will be around 400 million people who are eligible to vote. And this, by number, by the size, is the second largest democratic election in the world after India election. So, fairly important event, and to be able to participate in it with full knowledge and make informed decisions, we have an opportunity tonight, to learn more about European Parliament and its role. And we have the most suitable person to help us in that learning process. So, without further ado, welcome once again. Welcome everybody. Feel like at home, as we say here in Lithuania. And despite the fact that outside it's quite cold and snowy, let's make it a warm discussion. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rector. And the Rector already has started my job by starting to introduce our special guest today, which is very much suited for the debate on the European Parliament, but also on the youth and youth policy. And it's the President of European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, who is the youngest President of European Parliament and who has been very actively engaged in youth movements, in participation in youth movement since the very early days. And by the way, one of the events brought her to Vilnius, where she first laid eyes on her husband. And the first date, I guess, was in Helsinki, where you were protesting against Alexander Lukashenko. So participation in political movements, engaging in politics also have certain sweet side as well. Tomorrow we will be commemorating a very important event in Lithuania. It's January the 13th, and we wear these flowers on our dresses. And we remember that 34 years ago, 14 peaceful civilians were brutally killed by Soviet army. And for my generation, because I was the young generation at that time, it was a very, very important, remarkable event, which told us how important freedom is, and that you have to fight for the freedom every day and work for the freedom, that participating in politics, voting, is also the way to fight for the freedom. For your generation, you are facing no less challenges. We are having a terrible war in Ukraine, which is the worst war after the Second World War. We're facing the climate change, the exponential evolvement of artificial intelligence. It will affect all of us, but mostly it will affect you. It is very important for you also to be engaged, in creating your future. So you know that it is very important to go and vote in national elections and local elections. But my question to Madam the President, why is it so important to engage politically not on the national and local level, but also on the European level?
So, first of all, good evening. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you all for coming to spend your Friday evening with me. I can think of many other things to do on a Friday night, but here you are. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. The reason why I am in Vilnius, and I have, as you've said, been to Lithuania many times, mostly as a young activist, like I hope you are or will become. Hoping that my country, but also this country, would one day join the European Union. Why? Because we realized that that was the best thing we could work for our generation at the time, 23 years ago. Where are we today? I was asked earlier in the day, I had a similar event like I'm having with you in Riga a few hours ago, and I was asked about the economic impact of enlargement. And my answer to that student who asked me that question was 20 years ago. You probably don't remember. Actually, you do not remember. You are younger. You are younger than 20, right? Most of you. Yes, yes. 20 years ago, we wanted those countries that were already inside the European Union to look at us and say they are welcome. They should be part of us. We need to be part of the family. I think today we can all agree that that was a good idea. That was a good choice. We have done better. Look at Lithuania today. We'll celebrate 20 years of membership. Why is it important to vote? How many of you have been to the European Parliament? You are the EPAs.
Impressive.
How many of you have been to Strasbourg? Were you all in Strasbourg? So I will give you a picture. Yeah, Rasa and Andrius, you don't count in this. These are colleagues, members of the European Parliament elected from Lithuania. That picture that you have in front of you when you think of the European Parliament, over 700 blue seats. Whether you vote or not, those seats will be filled. Now you have a choice. Either you affect, you influence who sits on those seats, or you don't. If you do, you will be able to, over the next 5 months, say, I'm interested in climate. I'm interested in making sure my country is better connected digitally. I'm interested in making sure that my country is protected in terms of its security, its external border. I want to know what my members are doing, my representatives are doing on migration, on artificial intelligence. If you don't vote, you won't be able to do that. Because first of all, you might not like what you see, but secondly, it would have been your responsibility that you did not take. Your rector mentioned a lot of elections happening. I ask you to keep this in mind. There are more people on this planet who have no possibility to choose their leaders than there are. Now, the fact that we have that possibility means that I think for the past years, since 34 years ago, since decisions were taken by the leaders of the time to fight for freedom, to make sure Lithuania joins the European Union, things became comfortable. But then 24th February 2022 happened. Russia invaded Ukraine. And from then on, everything changed. I say from then on as myself, because I must say that my Lithuanian colleagues were saying that much earlier. You were saying this much earlier. Now, on the 9th of June, you will have the possibility to choose your representatives. My appeal to you, now, I presume all of you who are coming from Parliament ambassador schools, and that's a flagship program of the European Parliament, we are extremely proud of it, is that you tell your friends, you tell your families, and you convince. And most importantly, recognize and challenge me on this. I want you to ask me as many questions as you can. Not all politicians are the same. Politicians need to stand for something. You know, the easiest thing in life is to get elected once and then spend your time not taking any position. I belong to another type of politician. I want to stand for something, and I need to be able to defend it. There will be moments when you don't agree with me, but I will listen to your criticism, I will listen to your opinion. I might say, yes, you are right, actually. I was wrong. I should have done better. But the most important is that we have the conversation, and that you are able to analyze, you are able to choose, and you are able, for the next 5 years, to say, I like what my representative is doing, I don't like where Europe is going, I'm going to tell my representative. So please do that. And I hope that you can leave this room with a little challenge, that you will speak to your friends, your families over the next days, weeks and months, and convince them to vote. Because it's not only a responsibility and a duty, but also one of the best things you can do. I will go one step further. How many of you are interested in running for elections? Less. Not bad. Few hands here and there. Good. Don't be afraid of running for elections. You might not get elected the first time. I did not get elected the first time. I did not get elected the second time. But I wanted to make sure that if I believe in something, I can reach it. And that is what I would like you to also take away with you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So if you want to shape the Europe, you have to vote and engage actively in politics and be persistent if you are not getting elected the first time. So that's the lessons learned. And now I'd like to open the floor for the questions. And in this vibrant young audience, I'm sure that there are a lot of them. So I can already see the first one. I'll take 3, moving from that side to another side, and group them, and then we'll continue. So yeah, here.
You say your name, it's helpful
Yeah,
for me.
introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Anele. It's really, really nice to have you here in Lithuania. And my question is related to the thing that I like to say and to the thing that I hear other politicians saying, that youth is not the future, youth is the present. So my question would be, in this like really difficult times, I would say, a lot of crisis, COVID, climate change, war in Ukraine, and youth are really, really vulnerable. So what are the main things, the main initiatives that Europe does right now that are helping the young people? And is that enough, what Europe is doing right now?
Thank you. The second one? It's a little bit up.
So my name is Jokubas. So it was started already with the election year. And my question is connected to you. What are you going to do this year with elections? We saw that during the tensions between Manfred Weber and Ursula von der Leyen, he hinted that it is possible that Roberta Metsola has the same chances of running as the APP candidate for the presidency, as does Ursula von der Leyen. So when are you starting your campaign, and are you up for the job?
Thank you. Very encouraging.
Thank you.
And here, the last one is over there, the second row.
Hi, I'm here. Hello. Hi. Hi. I'm Georgie Bradley. I work at the European Institute for Gender Equality, which is about 200 meters away from here. We have our headquarters in Vilnius. My question to you is on gender equality, as you can probably imagine. Our 2023 Gender Equality Index showed again that while progress is being made, we are still about 60 years away from reaching full gender equality in the EU. And with the parliamentary elections coming up this year, how is Parliament supporting legislative progress to ensure that advances made are not undone? And what needs to happen during the next 5-year term to ensure more progress? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thanks for that. Youth is the present. Are we doing enough? We never do enough. I share your frustration in a way. I used to hate being told, actually, your time will come. Youth is the future. I said, no, I'm standing right here. We're a bunch of us that require decisions to be taken that affect us today. And what I learned is that the best way to counter this, your time will come, Europe is your future, etc., is to really put myself out there and be part. And this, I think, is what all, here I speak as a politician, all political parties should do. That they integrate younger people immediately in order for there to be a seamless transition between one generation and another. Too often that doesn't happen, and then it's too late. We have programs. We have, we just mentioned the European Parliament Ambassador Schools. We have educational programs. We have research programs. But I feel that we don't do enough to that youth that feel disenfranchised. In some countries because they live far away from cities. In other countries because they live in inner cities and feel that nobody represents them. Either from a connectivity point of view, access to the market, access to housing, access to being able to have a startup fund, like there is in other continents, for you to go out on your own. We are still extremely far away. And that hurts our competitiveness in the longer run. And it also leads in many countries to a brain drain. My sisters are both academics. And they really tell me that that's their biggest fear. They are younger than me, and they really think that Europe is losing out. When we look at the UK, when we look at the United States and other continents. So that's where I think we can do more in order to engage youth, young people better, at a younger age, in order for there to be a seamless transition. I would caution about the fact that if I compare to when I was entering politics to today, and here I will jump to the third question. I'm not ignoring the second question, but I'll jump to the third question first, is that social media has changed completely the way we do politics. It is a very hostile territory, hostile environment. It is exceptionally difficult for young women. And the biggest hurdle, actually, is not the fact that you do not have the numbers, but that simply there is no appetite because it's so harsh, especially for women. Rather than what you say, it is still about how you look. Rather than what you think, and if you think something, the idea would be rather that you didn't say it. It is still too difficult. I think we could do more. My solution, or at least my biggest effort, would be to have as many, especially in electoral systems such as the one I come from, preferential system. In other words, you need to present yourself and people have to be willing to give you, in our case, the actual vote, the number one that would be put next to your name, is that there would be more women on the list. I do not agree. This is sensitive, and we have a different situation in many countries. But I do not agree with fictitious mechanisms to bring women into politics. Because the last thing I would want is that I'm sitting here in front of you and you are thinking, she got elected because of a mechanism. I don't want that. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't make it easier for women who come after me. Because at the end of the day, I stand on the shoulders of the women who came before me. But I need to make it easier for them to break that barrier without it being one that is, let's say, that has the opposite effect. Not in the immediate term, but later. We work a lot on the gender pay gap. We have finally adopted the Women on Boards regulation. Very difficult to implement in some countries more than others. You mentioned, my past. My husband is from Finland. A huge gap between that country and others, including my own, in terms of where we have achieved, where we have arrived. But that's the beauty of the European Union, that you set benchmarks that are always making it possible for you to achieve higher. And that's what your institute, which is incredibly important and super proudly situated here in Vilnius, is doing. And I really thank you for your work. Now, what do I do next? The easiest, people always ask politicians, where are you, Jakubas? I have to see you, yeah. People always ask politicians, what do they do? What will they do next? Some politicians actually like that question. I'm more of, I would rather focus on what I'm doing now. I have 5 months ahead of me, together with my colleagues, to make sure that the 720 members, of whom 9 are from Lithuania, 9, yes, 11 from Lithuania, 11 are from Lithuania, will be presented to you so that we can together form what we would call pro-European constructive majority in the center. Now, this sounds like a big deal. At the end of the day, it is a majority in the parliament that can work to advance on climate, on digital, on migration, on security. People also like to talk about whether that politician likes another or not. It's not a career to discuss what others are doing, but rather what we can collectively do in order to make, sounds like a cliché, but there's never a better day for it, Europe a better place. So I will present myself as a candidate at home. I will run. This will be my 5th European Parliament election. It is an election that I love, one that you really see whole countries come together. And because it's all 27 countries, it's beautiful to know that all citizens in all your neighboring countries are going through the same exercise on the same weekend. And what I hope to be able to witness on the 9th of June in the evening is that we have a higher turnout, also from here. More people would have gone to vote, and that people would have chosen courageous members that can take very difficult steps in the next 5 years. And I hope to be part of those steps.
Good luck with the elections. And I guess, Madam the President just is a living example how to break that glass ceilings, and not in one way. On one hand, being a female president of European Parliament, but also coming from a very small country, from one of the smallest...
Smaller, we like to say, smaller.
Smaller country. In academia, we say small countries, but small are beautiful, and becoming a very important figure in a huge body such as European Union. And now I'd like to turn to the middle part of our auditorium. So we have, yes, you on, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth row. Yes, you. Okay, microphone, can you bring the microphone here in the center? Then we'll have a very close, the lady, and one more already closer to the left side of the...
Hi, hello, my name is Pavlo. I'm a student of Institute of Political Science and International Relations, Vilnius University, and my question is quite simple. So, can you please explain political impact your the post of President of European Parliament has? Because it says that the President of European Parliament is one of the most important people in EU making decisions. So, can you explain what's the real impact your post has on it? And the second question, we also, with my friends, we are representing here the recently created new Ukrainian youth organization, which is the first one in Lithuania. And we have a flag of Ukraine here. Can you please sign up?
Of course I can. That's easier than the first part of the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have one question, and then here, just right. Okay.
Ms. President, thank you very much for being here and taking this sincere interest in youth and Lithuania. I am Greta, the chairwoman of Student Scientific Society at the Institute of International Relations and Political Science, Vilnius University. And my question is quite difficult politically, and I know that there are some your colleagues from the European Parliament, so maybe I will burn some bridges today. But still, my question is that in Lithuania, there is a problem that the candidates for the EU Parliament are not usually, but sometimes, candidates who have difficulties to appear in the local Lithuanian elections, politicians who receive less popularity or support, and who wants to clean their history and are looking for a warm place in the European Parliament. Unfortunately. So what are the measures or conditions that should be taken to create to influence more politicians who sincerely believe in the EU and promote its values to take part in the parliamentary elections as candidates? Thank you.
Thank you. And we have last question over there. So sometimes European Parliament is used as the way to get rid of unpopular politicians or not very comfortable politicians. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Sergey, and dear Mrs. President, I believe it is nothing new that we feel unsafe due to the fact we border both Russia and Belarus. One of the key issues at the moment, our dependence on the electricity grid controlled by Russia. My question is, what measures is the EU taking to separate the Baltic countries from Russia's grid to make them either more independent or more integrated with the rest of Europe?
Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
Okay. So I will sign the flag, of course, Pablo. Pablo, right? Yeah. What is my political impact? So first of all, the Parliament is, we were discussing today that you can look at it from two ways. Either it is where you start your career or where you go after you have had a national career. I don't, let's say, put them into different categories, because at the end of the day, it depends on the quality of the member. It depends on the quality of the person elected. Because we were talking earlier about big and small countries, it doesn't matter whether you come from a big or a small country in the European Parliament, it is the quality and size of integrity of your ideas and the depth of your voice. The European Parliament is the only institution that is directly elected. And once you elect your members of the European Parliament, that's when there is a decision on the Commission, which is, as we would call it, the executive, the governing body. No funds would be dispersed to Lithuania without the European Parliament. There would be no laws on migration or the external borders without the European Parliament. Erasmus would not be possible without the European Parliament. Ukraine and Moldova were first declared candidate countries and asked to be candidate countries from the European Parliament. Are these set in stone? No. You could have a European Parliament that does much less. You could have a European Parliament that seeks to destroy the European project. But I'm proud to lead an institution that is firmly and resolutely in favor of building that project. Some members of the European Parliament are more visible than others. That is the choice, first of all, of the individual, but also it matters whether you are in a political group or not. If you are in a political group, then you are part of either a majority or not. And to your question, Greta, I would say, I've never heard of the word warm seat, but okay.
Comfortable seats.
Comfortable. But it's, before we joined the European Union, the same thing was said. I've been in the European Parliament now for 10 years, and I can tell you that you could use that for individuals, but that is not with the Lithuanian members who are here. Now, it's up to them to convince you as well. But I can, because they are close colleagues of mine. So perhaps the question is, do you need to get to know them better? And the second question, are you willing to do what they do? Put yourself forward. First election is always hard. But you know, coming from political parties, it's quite hard to find candidates as well. So this is where we can find a common ground. People mentioned here local elections, national elections. For me, I don't make a huge distinction. As a member of the European Parliament, you are a representative of your community on a local level and your country on a national level as much as on a European level. Because what you decide on, what you vote on, will end up in the national parliament to be voted on by your members. So that's why you have to be careful who you give the vote to and in whose hands you place that responsibility. We have huge votes ahead of us. I've mentioned migration already, the green legislation, social impact, how we help small businesses, how we make sure that small companies can survive. How can we make sure that we invest more in renewables? Sergey, where are you? Yeah. How can we build on what we've done? You know, 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I got elected. And I was asked immediately, what are you going to do? In the first press conference. And my answer was, look, we are in the middle of a raging pandemic. And I hope that we will start to see economic recovery from the pandemic. And that we will be able to then, after these 2 very difficult years, build and go to the next European Parliament elections with a stronger economic framework. who would have told me that just 4 weeks later would have the Russian invasion? And that what that would mean, not only that we take a decision that we should have taken over a decade ago to uncouple ourselves from a very unreliable neighbor for the sake of, let's say, thinking that this is going to last for longer because you spend less. So take that decision to, while uncoupling, pushing the pedal, you can use this as a pun, on more renewables, so that today we have jumped immensely, even in this country, in the use of renewable energy, which has replaced fossil fuels. Still a long way to go. But there are countries in the European Union where almost all energy that is generated, at least for households, is based on renewable. And that is where we legislate. That is thanks to the European Parliament. Now, does that mean we simply do that and move on? No, it's costly. It's our responsibility to make sure that we soften the impact, because the impact is high, and we cannot lose our citizens. We cannot tell you, listen, this is good for you, do it, if it's going to cost you much more. So for us, it has been extremely difficult, but thanks to the European Parliament and the pressure, where we said, okay, we are going to push for the uncoupling, diversification of our energy sources, giving specific help to our businesses and our industries, but then we also said, make sure that the smallest of businesses are helped too, families are helped too, people who live in the old towns of cities are helped too. So in a way, we have had to live up to that expectation of being important as an institution by delivering on what our citizens want. And what we are having today as a conversation is one that has to happen everywhere on every subject. Because decisions, as I said before, will be taken anyway. But you want to make sure that the decisions that are taken impact you in a positive way. And if they are going to be hard, that you are helped to meet them. That's what we stand for. That's what we are here for. And because we have such elections, this is what democracy requires, that we stand by our commitments. Because I want to be able to meet you, hopefully in a few years' time, and you say, listen, what happened to your promise? I want you to see me in Strasbourg and in Brussels and say, listen, you know, in Vilnius you told us this, where are we at? One thing I wanted to mention, back to gender, is violence, which exactly 2 years today we had the murder of Aisling in Ireland, which I mentioned in my inauguration speech. Paulina Dębska, Polish woman in my own country. We still have too many attacks on women in Europe. And our systems are not always well equipped. That is a gender aspect that I think we need to do more on, and we need to speak out more, especially people like me and colleagues who are in a position to do so.
Thank you, Madam the President. And I had already 3 people which I depict. So one is in the center, one is there with the glasses, and the lady.
Even the ones who are standing, yeah.
In the back. So we'll start here. Yeah, here you go.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Ihor. I'm also a colleague of Pavlo, member of Ukrainian youth group in Lithuania. And my question is dedicated to our main goal. That so recently there has been very good news about so-called replenishment of the EU family by such countries as Ukraine and Moldova. And regarding the participation of young people, namely Ukrainian youth, in European integration processes, we can see the trend of interest in Ukrainian place in European family. In 2021, the percentage of young people who said yes was 67%, and already in 2022 it was 84%. So my question is, how can Ukrainian youth influence the success of European integration processes for Ukraine right now? What are our steps, what we have to do, like a youth? Thank you.
It's a very relevant question, I guess, today. Yeah.
Just go.
Good evening, President. Well, first of all, since you mentioned gender violence, I'm from Italy. My name is Elia, and we just had, it's quite on the news right now, so I hope that in this sense also we had an homicide in this sense, so I hope that also the European institutions can do something about it to help us proceed with that, but that's not my question. My question was, right now enlargement is back on the agenda, so is institutional reform of the European Union. The European Parliament has advocated for a treaty change in this sense, which would also grant it more power, more influence in the decision-making process and so on. But right now it's also true that it's difficult, it seems difficult to achieve. Member states are not unanimous on the treaty change. There is also a lot of politicization of these issues and Euroscepticism, so also ratification in the member states then would be difficult. So as a European citizen, I feel frustrated by the democratic deficit that I feel like there is in the European Union. I would like to see the European Parliament be stronger. So my question for you is, where do you see in this institutional reform like Parliament going, in a sense of like where could it get its power resources, and more generally, how can we make the European Union more democratic? Thank you.
Very relevant. Enlargement and institutional reform. So we have, I mixed a bit up things, so we have two questions. Yes, over there and in the back, right.
Good evening, Mrs. President. I would like to say that you're definitely right about that, that we are responsible for Europe's future, and the youth is Europe's future. And my question is, Europe is becoming more radical than ever before, and a lot of radical candidates are winning the elections. What do you think about this situation? Is it a danger for Europe?
What was the last
Radicalization of the politicians, is it a danger for Europe, right?
Okay.
One more. And one more. In the back. Can you just ask people to pass the microphone, that's going to be faster. Just don't grab the microphone, it's the lady in the back. Don't intercept it.
Hi, Ms. President. So we are the participants of the MAPA project, and our question is, what is your opinion on the possibility of voting from the age of 16? What do you think? Will this increase interest in influencing the future among young people, or this decision will make it worse?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so 84% of young people want Ukraine to be more integrated in the European Union. Sika. I give you one statistic. Over 75% of young people in the UK did not want Brexit. Only 36 of them voted. By contrast, those who wanted the UK to leave the European Union, older voters, 80% of them voted. My answer to you is vote. Because the risk is that members of the European Parliament who do not have an interest in seeing Ukraine in the European Union will get elected. And I will link it to radicalization of politics, It's an interesting word. Is it a danger or not? If there's one thing I have learned ever since I've begun my sort of pro-European path, is that it's always easier to be against than to be for. And that is growing. It is easier to give a black and white answer to a question, yes and no. But most of the time, my answer will be a shade of gray. Less sexy, but correct, the truth. If you're going to ask me, for example, is treaty change going to be the solution for the democratic deficit? I will answer in the same way I would have 20 years ago. It was my thesis. No, actually, it was my European law question, and I had in one of my exams. It was on the day that the Nice Treaty came into force. Well, I had to answer it. If you ask me whether the European Union is going to become more efficient, more united, more stronger, simply because we change a treaty, I would say no. I tell you why. You come from Italy, I come from the south as well. We did not have unanimity for migration. Those are decisions that could be taken by majority. For many years, no willingness to take decisions by majority. One country or two could block. If we take it from another point of view, in other words, we say, what works somehow today for 27? Will it work for 30, for 32, for 33, 35? I would say no. Because the structures that we have will need to change. Successively, whenever there was a change of a treaty, Parliament gained more powers. I think we can all agree it was a good idea. We're now co-legislators. We have somehow a little bit of a right of initiative. We should have more. Our right of inquiry has been strengthened. We should have more, and we will. But our right of scrutiny, in other words, how we evaluate what the Commission does, how we make sure that each commissioner who represents, you have one from Lithuania, one from each member state, comes to the Parliament and answers questions like any other government minister would come to the national parliament. Can we do more? Much more. So it will require a willingness, but only on the part of those who want to build. Because there will be, and those votes will come. And I'm not doing this as in terms of spreading fear. That's not mine. I can deal with adversity. But what I don't want you to think, or myself to think, the day after the election, on the 10th of June, that we could have done more to have people who really believe in the project, who really love their country and would like their country to do better, who really want to have closer relations with their neighbors, who really want to make sure that if they can invest in connections with other Baltic countries, with Poland, with the north, with Finland and Sweden, from an electricity generation point of view or importation, then that's thanks to the European Union. And that is what will require from us huge decisions in the next 5 years. It does not necessarily all require a change in the treaty. But thank you for asking that, because there's always one who asks about treaty change. And it's usually an Italian. Now, voting age. My country votes at 16. And I voted for voting for 16. It's too early to say and analyze the votes that come from 16 and to 18-year-olds, right? But I took the decision to send a message that if you are 16 and you can already take very serious decisions in your life, then why not vote? We have 4 countries where voters this year will vote at 16: Belgium, Luxembourg, Malta, and Germany, and Greece will vote at 17. In some countries it's obligatory, so Belgium, is obligatory. But in other countries, we will have to conduct a completely different type of campaign for 16 to 18-year-olds. I can tell you it's because if we have Facebook that is used for a specific generation that is not used for 16-year-olds. I can tell you because my son is one of those 16-year-olds, and I really hope he votes for me. And I have to convince him. And I've asked him how he would be convinced. And he told me, whatever you do, don't be on TikTok. I do not want to see my mother when I scroll. But I need to reach that generation. And when I say I need to reach that generation together with my colleagues, that's a pretty crowded feed. You know, any of you who this? I didn't know what this was until a few years ago. Because the amount of disinformation and misinformation and propaganda that we have at the moment is huge. And we're going to have to be really careful. Perhaps not already for this election, but in a couple of elections' time, we will really seriously start to worry about artificial intelligence interference on how you shape political narrative and decisions. We need to be better. And we need to provide a product that is votable. And it is not always easy when it's not black and white, when you do not fall in the radical category. But I'm convinced that if you are honest about where you have succeeded, but also honest about your frustrations, I get so frustrated sometimes about our processes, our procedures, they're slow, But if you say it, if you look, for example, at the discussions that we need to have with huge parts of our voters, I use farmers as a specific category, the worst we would do as candidates, as representatives, is not to talk, but rather listen. Because nothing has ever come out from ignoring people with a genuine concern. And that's our job, and that's what we need to do. And if that starts at 16, we go at 16. Am I done? Yes, I think so.
So not to be accused of discrimination, I have to turn that ways and allow the opportunity to ask the questions the side. So we have one question. Yeah. Yeah, here. Not too far away.
Good evening. My name is Vidmanta, and last semester of my studies I spent in France thanks to the Erasmus program, and it made me feel very European. Also, as a political science student, in my class we questioned the idea of European identity very often, especially with the upcoming enlargement in place. And my question regards exactly that. How do we strengthen internally the European Union and its community? We know of very good examples. We are very lucky here in Vilnius, especially because we'll be hosting the local European youth event on the 3rd and 4th of May. So this is one of the best examples of going into the community, going into the countries and reminding them of what being a European truly is and reminding them of the possibilities. So what other initiatives is the European Parliament doing to strengthen the European Union community internally?
Thank you. And two more. I have the first row and someone else somewhere. Yeah.
Hello. I have a very simple question about young people in rural areas. It looks like European Union institutions are very far away from them, but actually they live with their own problems. We have a lot of initiatives like Smart Village, leader programs, but actually schools are getting to be closed in rural areas. What is your attitude to young people who live in peripheral or regional places? Thank you.
Good. Thank you. So we have two more questions then, because the microphone was intercepted. The first row here, first row here. So don't intercept the microphones. That was the last time I allowed it.
Good evening. Thank you for your speech. I'm Liana from Vilnius University Students Representation. And my question today is, do you think that European Parliament should contribute or maybe is planning on contributing to equally approach the educational system between European countries? Thank you.
Okay, and the last row, you can just pass the microphone there, yeah, don't intercept it. It's the last row, the gentleman in the last row, yeah.
Thank you. So my name is Dominikas, and Yours Excellency, I would like to thank you for participating in this discussion. Hopefully our lovely and cozy Lithuanian weather was quite a delightful surprise.
I have to spend 1 hour outside now, right? With the bonfires. Stop.
Tomorrow.
No, now. Bonfire.
So, the last year was quite challenging for us, to say it nicely. New conflicts arose, and the old ones failed to meet our expectations. Do you think European Union has enough firepower on its own to survive new threats coming from the east, and to ensure that we can have a future to build on?
So firepower, the last question, because time's running up.
All right, so thank you for hosting the local European youth event. Make sure that all the candidates are there. Tell them to put it in their calendar. We host very big events in the Parliament, like the European Youth Event every couple of years. We have thousands of people who come from all over Europe. I wish that those events would also reach people beyond students of political science who have been on Erasmus. The reference to the rural areas was particularly important because I recall specifically when I was vice president and I came to Vilnius a couple of years ago, I met with young farmers who told me exactly the same thing. There is a feeling of being far away. And this is not only because you are far away in terms of you are by what does periphery mean? I have met young people who come from the center of Spain, in the middle of the country. That's not a peripheral region, but they feel abandoned. Young people in France didn't vote last elections. They felt that no politician spoke for them. And their isolation was not only because they were physically far away, but because they felt, even in the middle of the city, that they were not looked after. My biggest fear is that we go back to a situation like we had during COVID, where everything stopped. And the instinct of governments, all of them, was to reintroduce national borders. So after years of working for the borders to be dismantled, because we pride ourselves on free movement, we want Schengen to work. Schengen is what allows you to move around freely. Went because we thought a virus was going to be stopped by a police guard. It wasn't very successful, I think. But today, we have a larger number of internal borders closed than ever. Why? Because there is no trust. So we need to start by looking at each other around the table and say, do we go back to trusting each other? And this is particularly in the field of migration and movement of people. So I think we can do much more. We cannot forget young people in rural areas. I admit that for many years, we were told, don't worry, cities will take over. Post office is closed. Life ends for people who come from far away. It's our responsibility to make sure that everybody is included. And, every country has different situations. So some people live very, very, very remotely. Some people live as the only person remaining on one of the Greek islands. Same thing. That's still the European Union. We need to do everything to keep them included. Education. We still have huge gaps in education between one country and another. This is a pity. We even see, but in some countries, for example, that between schools in one city and another, big differences. Now, education is not per se a competence of the European Union, but guiding principles, best practices, recognition of qualifications is all competence. And we should do much more. And I expect much more from the next Commission to do that. Why? Because I referred at the very beginning, to brain drain, the fact that we are not doing enough to keep our young people motivated, good, competitive, etc. This morning I was asked a question also, how do we match what you study with how you work? In other words, what you graduate with. Even if you don't graduate, do you find a job? Is the market ready to take you in? Are you ready to fill the market gaps? Big societal questions we need to answer, and that all comes down to education. And I think this goes for every single member state, paying our teachers more. It is very difficult for us to see, and I come from a family of teachers, that's what they have been saying since I was very young. Firepower. Political firepower we have done amazing things. We have managed, to adopt legislation, for example, on 1 million rounds of ammunition in 8 weeks. I would never have thought possible. 8 weeks. Gas storage, 6 weeks. Do we have enough to go forward? No. Next few weeks will be crucial. We have a special European Council on the 1st of February, where we are being asked to agree on 50 billion euros for Ukraine, a top-up of the multi-annual financial framework, not to eat up Horizon program, research, Erasmus, many mentioned by you, but also to make sure that countries do not feel abandoned on migration and on natural disasters. We will need to find a solution. I'm hopeful, cautiously optimistic that we will, because I would say we have no choice. And February is quite soon coming. And we cannot leave Ukraine alone. And what I would like to see is that we are capable enough as a union to defend ourselves, complementing NATO, not competing, very important, but keeping in mind that the scenario later on this year could mean a different administration in the United States. That will have a very direct impact on us. And if, of course I hope it doesn't, if it happens, we need to be prepared. We cannot find ourselves on the 5th of January, exactly 1 year from now, and say, ooh, it's happening. I don't think it will, but.
Thank you, Madam President. And although I'm sure that there are so many questions in this audience to be asked, but as always, interesting classes, interesting movies are getting to the end at some point. So our conversation is getting to the end. And in fact, I think that you've spoke about a very wide variety of interesting issues which are affecting the European Union, which are affecting Europe, from the climate change to institutional reform, enlargement, political cycles. But I think that, what I'm taking away is one thing, that the history of the European Union is a history of crisis. And European Union is constantly in the crisis, but after every crisis, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And in fact, the role of the European Parliament is also growing, and it's the institution of that the role of which has been growing constantly over the last decades. So there is a certain optimism about the European Union getting over from crisis, and the role of the Parliament, and why the Parliament is so important, because it's a direct tool of democracy. European Union has been accused for so many times of being undemocratic institution. So Parliament is the institution that allows you to cast your democratic right to vote. So I think the message that comes from our discussion is just don't forget that you have a duty to vote for in the European Parliament elections. So vote and, how you said, discuss with your colleagues.
Hold them to account, yes.
So thank you very much, Madam President, for your discussion.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to ask you to come a step forward for the family photo.
What do you want me to do?
Family photo.
These are my comms people. You want me to take a photo? You want to come?